Hi everyone, it's Hani here, and today I'm going to share with you a step-by-step tutorial on how to decorate this festive Christmas gingerbread house. Let's get started. First, I'm going to make some royal icing transfers. This is going to be a window on the front of the panel. I'm using black royal icing, about 10 to 15 second consistency here. I've got a template underneath, and I'm piping on a piece of parchment. You can also use wax paper or acetate sheet, which is like a sheet protector. And I'm also going to make the door as transfer. And for the door, I'm using, this is about 20 second consistency here. And you can make all of these transfers ahead of time. When I say ahead of time, you could make them months in advance or even several years. But in our case, I would suggest that you make them day before you actually plan on decorating your house panels. And since we have two sides on this house, and each of the sides will have two windows, you need to make 4 square windows for the sides. And again, let these dry overnight. Once these are dry, we can add additional details. I'm using piping consistency white royal icing here, and I've got my bag fitted with a piping tip number 2. I'm just gonna make the grid, and you can see I'm not going all the way to the edge because I will be adding a frame, and those white lines would interfere with my frame. Don't forget to add the lines onto the small square windows. To make the frame, I am using red royal icing. This is stiff consistency here, and I've got my bag fitted with a basket weave piping tip, and you can see I have a smooth end of the piping tip facing up and the end with the teeth that you normally would see. A lot of times people just use that end. It's facing down. Also, don't forget to do the large window. When you are finishing the line, you can see I'm actually touching the surface to break the line. And for any excess that you see, I'm using a 2-in-1 tool, just scraping that icing off, making it a bit neater. Now we can finish the door. I'm using, this is the same consistency I used for the door, 20 second here. And we have to let this dry again. Once the frame and the grid is dry, we can add snow. I'm using white royal icing here. And for the snow, I'm going to use white sanding sugar. I think white sanding sugar should be mandatory for all Christmas projects. It just adds such a nice texture, and it does look like snow. If you don't have sanding sugar, you could, for the snow I mean, you could get away with using granulated sugar, but because sanding sugar has larger crystals, it just sparkles differently. It reacts to light differently than granulated sugar, which is finer. Oh, oops. I actually dropped this panel on the floor, and so I have to glue it back together before you can decorate it. I'm going to let it sit for a couple hours, and then it should be ready to go. To decorate my house panels, I am using this forest green, and to make this color I used leaf green and I added brown royal icing to it. And you can see it's pretty stiff. You want to spread this edge to edge in a thin layer on the panel, and then we're going to make I wanted to make like a siding finish. So to help me make sure that the lines are evenly distributed, I am using a grid underneath, and I'm using my 2-in-1 tool, running it through, basically scraping the icing, leaving these lines visible. You want to wipe the 2-in-1 tool in a dry, clean paper towel in between. So while this is wet, you can glue the door and the window onto the house. This is going to be the front panel. And now let that dry, and then we can add some snow also onto the siding. So I'm just going to brush this on and immediately dust it with sanding sugar. You can see I've got the cookie on a paper towel. It's going to catch all the excess sugar. And there. To finish the door, I'm using white royal icing, stiff consistency, and again this is a basket weave, but this time I've got the teeth end facing up and the smooth end facing down. And again I'm anchoring it, touching the surface. Let that crust for about 20 minutes, and then we can make the garland. I'm using piping consistency brown royal icing here. And to make the leaf tip, I'm gonna show you how to do that. So I cut a straight line across like this, and then I cut a small V-shaped opening in my piping bag. And then you need to turn it so the seam is on the top like this, and then you can test it if the leaf is coming out. So all is good. So I'm going to add some leaves. And it looks like we need some red again, because I love red and green together, especially for Christmas. It's so beautiful. So I'm going to use red royal icing to make some berries. After I'm done piping all these tiny leaves. Alright, so now we can add the berries. You can let it crust in between just so the berry doesn't blend into the green icing. There's gonna be a nice definition then. To make the holly leaves, I'm using, again, this is the same icing I used for the leaves on the door, and I'm moving my piping bag up and down. And again, add the berry. To make the wreath, I'm using stiff consistency royal icing, and I just switched my number 2 round piping tip for a small star piping tip number 16. And I'm piping onto the parchment. Again, this is a royal icing transfer. This needs to dry overnight. And I'm just going to leave this as is. Once dry, you can turn it over and add some royal icing and glue that onto the house. More holly leaves, and then add a berry on the door and a doorknob with brown royal icing. This is the back of the house, very simple. I'm just going to finish this by adding some sanding sugar. So we've got the front and the back ready, and now we can do the sides. Again, spread a thin layer of this dark green royal icing onto the side. I would suggest that you work with one side at a time, because thick royal icing, it tends to crust faster than flat consistency royal icing, and we still have to do some work on this panel. So to make sure that it's not crusted over, it's better to work with one panel at a time. And don't forget to wipe the tool between. And there. Now you can glue the windows. Just add a little bit of icing on the back. Some shifting motion to glue this on. Let it dry, and again brush some white royal icing onto the green and dust it with sanding sugar. All right. And it's missing something. Yes, I'm going to add the holly leaves. Again, up and down motion. Now you can add the berry. It's just a really nice touch adding the holly leaves. To decorate the roof, I'm going to spread thin layer of black royal icing edge to edge, and then you can either skip the next step and go ahead and just dust it with some sanding sugar, or you can do what I did. I sprayed the black with some pearl color mist, and then I added some sanding sugar. And you have to repeat this on the other roof. We need 2 roof panels. And then we have to let this dry. Because this is such a thin layer of royal icing, it will take maybe 5 hours or so to dry, maybe even faster. So now we are ready to assemble the house. Are you guys excited? So I'm using some thick royal icing here for the glue, and you can see I put rubber liner underneath. I just find it helps to prevent the house from sliding, and it also helps me when I'm gluing the roof on and I need to use supports so they are not sliding. So let the base structure dry for a couple hours, and then you can add the roof panels. I'm going to hold the panels in place for about 20-30 seconds, and then you can use a skewer to support the roof, and so it's not sliding down. Let that dry for 2-3 hours, and then you can remove the skewers and finish the design by adding more details. I'm going to seal the gap between the roof panels with some white royal icing, and we're going to, guess what, dust it with more sanding sugar. There we go. Now we can also add some white on the front. I'm just going in like back and forth zigzag line. It does not have to be perfect, I wouldn't worry about that. And then immediately dust it with some sugar. More white icing on the bottom here. And there you have it. That's how you can make this beautiful festive Christmas gingerbread house. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I can't wait to see your pictures. Please do share them with me. I'd love to see what you guys created. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.